clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune.
Here we go.
Aye. Mr. Scott.
We're voting on
Mr.
Robert
Cassidy.
Kennedy
Mr.
Jr.
Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford. Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines. Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr. Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell.
No.
Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren.
No.
Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders.
No.
Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman. Chairman votes aye. Mr. Chairman, the final tally is 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was, would the clerk please restate the vote?
Mr. Chairman, the final tally was 14 ayes, 13 nays.
The vote was 14-13. The nomination is reported favorably. We will now turn to other senators who would like to make a statement. Since I asked my Republican colleagues to hold off at the outset, I'll go to the Republican side next. First, Senator Tillis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted aye today, and I want to just briefly explain why. I believe in my 65 years, I'll be 65 in August, that Mr. Kennedy will be one of the first people coming before who is in fact not a trained healthcare expert. He views this through the lens of an attorney. He's brought many lawsuits on food safety, vaccine safety, a number of other things. But Mr. Chair, I think it was Senator Warnock that said that the president said he was going to go wild in the Department of Health and Human Services. I hope he does. I hope he goes wild and actually finds a way to reduce the cost of health care. I hope he goes wild, and instead of having the discussions that we have had for the 10 years that I've been in the Senate of making Medicaid work and making people on Medicaid healthier, I hope he goes wild and figures out how to do it, because the status quo has not achieved much in the way of gain. I hope he goes wild on food safety discussions so that we can actually improve our food safety supply. I hope he goes wild on the healthcare supply chains and, in fact, tries to make sure that drug prices go down instead of bludgeoning pharmaceutical companies, get everybody in the room and make sure that we do this right. Reduce the cost of bringing a vaccine to market, reduce the cost of bringing drugs and therapeutics to market, look at the full supply chain, and somebody with a legal mind may do that. He is no health professional. In fact, he's the first, I believe, and since I've been alive, who's not been a healthcare professional in a scientific sense, but he is a professional in terms of carrying this forward and holding people accountable through the courts. And also, Mr. Chair, I'm not going to go much longer, but I had a lot of people call me earlier. I had people from the agriculture industry call me and express concerns, but I'm not aware of any organized, credible group, the Farm Bureau, the Department of Ag Commissioners, or others, who have said that we should vote against Mr. Kennedy. I heard people express their concerns about his pro-choice position. And yet I haven't seen any pro-life organization score this vote or recommend that we should vote against it. I heard him call the NRA a terrorist organization, and yet the NRA is silent on his confirmation. And so I've heard him say that GMOs are a concern. Hopefully we can convince him that not all GMOs are. It's feeding the world. Corn, drought-resistant strains of healthy vegetables will move on. Protein producers were mad about lawsuits were brought against them.
RFK is about to bring everything down, if you ask me.
And so maybe it is time to have a different kind of disruptor there. The only way that Senator Kennedy, the only way that Bobby Kennedy and I will get crosswise is if he does actually take a position against the safety of proven vaccines. That will be a problem for me. He answered a very important question to me during the hearing. I asked him specifically if it was his intent to let the scientists of the CDC, the NIH, BARDA, and other organizations to work independently. He said to me under oath that he would. If he fails to do that, that will be a concern for me and something I'll bring up in a future oversight hearing. But, Mr. Chair, we have not made appreciable progress in Medicaid and improving the health of the population on Medicaid. We have a SNAP program that does have too much sugar and things that are eligible in that program that should be eliminated to make these people who are on free and reduced lunch healthier. We need to stop having full trash cans in public school cafeterias full of stuff that the kids aren't eating and figure out how those kids on free and reduced lunch actually have a healthier lifestyle. And so I, for one, think that it is time to put a disruptor in. It is time to put somebody in there that's going to go wild.
Let's go, brother.
But there are areas where I think that's exactly what we need. And there are areas of Health and Human Services that if you touch the gold standard for the NIH and the CDC,
I love how I'm watching the health stuff while I'm eating chips.
Bring that up during oversight. But it was for those reasons.
They're baked, though.
And the fact is that there's not a single organization that I consider to be credible in this space, in agriculture, in Second Amendment, or in pro-life, who have openly objected and scored this vote. I believe that silence is consent. And the fact that they haven't suggests to me that folks that I'm instructed by are okay with this nomination. And for those reasons, I voted for Mr. Kennedy.
Let's go.
Thank you, Senator Tillis. Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, God.
Since we had our hearing
Pocahontas.
last week, Mr. Kennedy has amended his ethics.
She's one of the biggest
Recall that his
receivers
ethics
of
agreement
big
said
pharma donations.
that
Her and Bernie
while he was
Sanders.
Secretary of HHS, he intended to retain a financial interest in ongoing vaccine litigation that he was already collecting money from, and that he wanted to continue to collect that money even though he could affect the outcome of that litigation. Now, he has since changed his position on that. He, once this has been exposed and people have talked about it and have some pretty serious reservations about his doing that, he has said that he will instead give his financial interest to his son. That is a fig leaf that is so small, it would take a magnifying glass to see it. No one is
This
thrilled
lady is
about
insane.
what's happening here.
I truly believe that.
Mr. Kennedy refuses to say that he will not participate in these lawsuits financially the day after he leaves office. And yet, Mr. Kennedy has acknowledged, first, that the American people have a right to know that the decisions you're making are decisions that are in their interest, not in your future financial interest. He has said he thinks that's the right standard, and yet he has figured out how to make money off his anti-vax positions. He's already raked in $2.5 million. He is in a position where he can affect the outcomes by things he does as Secretary
She's so emotional.
of HHS,
I don't get it.
And yet he refuses
Actually, I get it,
to
but
say that he will delay by even
it's because she gets paid by all these people.
Find the lowest priced health plans at healthforcalifornia.com. Get a
of interest, and it's one in which the American people can reasonably ask, is Mr. Kennedy's plan to help the American people, or is he planning to use this job to further enrich himself, and he's pointed out with his son, and enrich his family? The importance of this litigation
Who's going to enrich him
cannot
when
be
he's
overstated.
trying to
This
cut
is not
funding and
only
everything?
about a private company
Who's gonna
that
donate
gets
to that?
sued and has to pay out.
Doesn't make sense.
Vaccine manufacturers often operate on very slim profit margins.
Very slim profit
If they
margin.
get sued,
Then how do they have enough
successfully
money
and
to pay Elizabeth
successfully,
Warren and Bernie
they simply
Sanders and all
move
these other
out of the
people? Where?
vaccine
That's why the
space.
margin's slim.
We've already seen this happen with vaccines in the past. 20 years ago, we watched vaccines just move away if they did not have protection from these kinds of lawsuits. The consequence of Mr. Kennedy's ability to make those lawsuits easier is also the ability to shut down access and manufacturing for vaccines for every one of us, and I think that's a terrible mistake.
Thank you. Senator Welch, did you wish to speak?
I did.
Mr.
Yes, thank you.
Crapo. This guy's name is
Thank
Mr.
you, Mr.
Crapo.
Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, and thank you, Mr. Ranking Member, for your statement.
What a Mr. Crap.
I want a disruptor in the healthcare system and one leading it. I don't want a destroyer. And there's three issues before any nominee
always these
that we have to
baldies who are
consider.
angry.
One is character, another is competence, and the third is priorities. We did not have Carolyn Kennedy here, but she gave a statement. And she said that Bobby was able to attract people through the strength of his personality, his willingness to take risk, and break the rules. And those might be desirable qualities
boring.
if it was accompanied by sober judgment and behavior. Because
what else
the
is
person
live.
who leads a major organization has to have the...
Let's see what else is going on. No. Go back. Let's see. American Airlines being removed from the Potomac River. What am I looking at? I think this is a crane on a boat. Oh, I see. There's people on there. False info, Remy. Plum Island? What the hell's Plum Island?